Elena Rodriguez had owned Cafe Luna for 12 years. At 54, she'd weathered recessions, food trends, and 3 different landlords. But this summer was different. This summer was breaking her. The lunch crowd had dwindled to a handful of regulars. The evening reservations book looked like a ghost town. Her head chef had left for a corporate job 2 weeks ago, taking half her kitchen staff with him. Elena stood in her empty dining room at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday evening, watching dust motes dance in the late afternoon sunlight streaming through windows that used to frame a bustling restaurant. The bills sat in a neat stack on her desk upstairs. Rent, utilities, supplier invoices. The numbers told a story she didn't want to read. She needed a miracle. What she got was David Mitchell. David appeared at her back door on a Wednesday morning, holding a wrinkled newspaper clipping of her help-wanted ad. He was maybe 40 with tired eyes and work-worn hands. His shirt was clean but frayed at the collar, and he carried himself with the careful posture of a man who'd learned not to ask for much. "I know I don't look like chef material," he said before Elena could speak, "but I can cook, and I need this job." Elena almost said no immediately. She needed someone with credentials, experience, references, someone who could salvage what was left of her restaurant's reputation. But something in his voice stopped her. Maybe it was the quiet desperation that matched her own. Or maybe it was the way he looked directly at her when he spoke. No pretense, no sales pitch. "What's your experience?" she asked. 15 years cooking. Not in fancy places. Diners mostly. "Short order stuff." He paused. "I've been out of work for 3 months. My daughter. She's 8. We're staying at my sister's place and He cleared his throat. "I really need this job, ma'am." Elena looked at the empty kitchen behind her. She had exactly $47 in the restaurant's checking account and a dining room that echoed when she walked through it. "Can you start today?" she asked. David's first lunch service was a disaster in the way that most desperate gambles are disasters. He burned the first order of soup, underseasoned the chicken, and served bread that was somehow both soggy and hard. Elena watched from the pass, her heart sinking. She'd hired him out of her own desperation, and now she was watching her restaurant's final death throes. But then something strange happened. Mrs. Patterson, her most loyal customer, sent back her chicken sandwich. Instead of making excuses or getting defensive, David walked out to her table himself. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Patterson," he said simply. "That's not good enough. Let me make you something better." He disappeared into the kitchen and returned 20 minutes later with a plate that made the entire restaurant smell like Sunday dinner at someone's grandmother's house. It wasn't on the menu. Elena had no idea what it was. Mrs. Patterson took one bite and smiled, the first genuine smile Elena had seen in her restaurant in months. "Young man," she said, "what on earth is in this chicken?" "Just some love, ma'am," David replied. "And my grandmother's secret." That evening, after the last customer left, Elena found David cleaning the kitchen with the methodical care of someone who'd learned to take pride in small things. "That dish you made for Mrs. Patterson," she said. "What was it?" David paused, his hands still in the soapy water. "My grandmother's recipe. She raised me after my mom passed. Used to say that cooking wasn't about the ingredients you could afford. It was about the care you put into using them." He pulled his hands from the water, dried them slowly. She'd take the toughest piece of chicken, the vegetables that were starting to turn, the herbs that were past their prime, and somehow she'd make magic. Said the secret ingredient wasn't anything you could buy at the store. What was it? David smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. Time and paying attention. And cooking for people you care about, even if you don't know them yet. Elena felt something shift in her chest, a warmth she hadn't felt in months. "Show me," she said. Over the next few weeks, David transformed Cafe Luna's kitchen, not with expensive equipment or exotic ingredients, but with something Elena hadn't seen there in years: intention. He arrived early every morning, before Elena, and she'd find him prepping vegetables with the focus of a craftsman. He'd study each tomato, each onion, selecting and trimming with care. He talked to the food, she noticed. Not crazy talk, but the kind of gentle commentary her own grandmother had used while cooking. "Come on, sweetheart," he'd say to a stubborn piece of meat. "Let's see what you want to become today." The menu didn't change dramatically. They still served sandwiches and salads, soups and simple entrees, but somehow everything tasted different. Customers began lingering over their meals instead of rushing through them. People started asking what made the food so good. David never claimed credit. When customers complimented him, he'd nod toward Elena. "She's the one who gave me the chance," he'd say. "I just try to cook like my grandmother taught me." The breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday in September. Elena was reviewing the week's receipts, hardly believing the numbers, when she heard laughter from the dining room. Real laughter, the kind that made her remember why she'd opened a restaurant in the first place. She walked out to find every table full. A young couple sharing dessert by the window, a group of women celebrating someone's promotion, an elderly man reading his newspaper while savoring his soup. At the corner table sat David's daughter, Lucy, working on homework while her father finished prep for dinner service. Elena had been worried when David asked if Lucy could come by after school sometimes, but the little girl had become part of the restaurant's charm. Customers would stop to ask about her school projects. Mrs. Patterson had started bringing her books. "Miss Elena," Lucy looked up from her math worksheet. "Daddy says you saved us, but I think Daddy saved you too." Elena looked around her full restaurant, at David working quietly in the kitchen, at customers who'd become friends, at a little girl who'd found a safe place to do her homework. "I think you're right, sweetheart," Elena said softly. 6 months later, Cafe Luna had a waiting list for weekend dinner reservations. Food bloggers had discovered them. There was talk of a review in the city paper. But on a quiet Tuesday morning, Elena found David sitting at the prep table, staring at his hands. "You okay?" she asked. "Lucy's teacher called yesterday. There's a gifted program at a school across town, full scholarship. It's an amazing opportunity for her." Elena felt her stomach drop. But the hours would be different. I'd need to pick her up earlier, and the commute." He looked up at Elena. "I might have to find something closer to her new school." Elena sat down across from him. 6 months ago, she would have panicked. The restaurant depended on him now. But looking at David's face, she realized something had changed in her too. "What does Lucy want?" she asked. "She wants to go to the new school, but she also wants to keep coming here after school, keep doing homework at her corner table." Elena smiled. "Then we'll figure it out. Maybe it's time I learned your grandmother's secret ingredient properly, and maybe we can afford an assistant chef now, someone who can cover when you need to leave early." David's eyes filled with tears. "You'd do that? David, you saved my restaurant. But more than that, you reminded me why I loved cooking in the first place. Family takes care of family." 2 years later, Cafe Luna had expanded into the space next door. David was head chef, with 2 assistants he'd trained in his grandmother's philosophy of cooking with care. Lucy, now 10, still did her homework at the corner table. But now she also helped fold napkins and taught younger children who visited the restaurant. Elena kept the original Help Wanted ad framed in her office, next to a photo of David's grandmother that Lucy had brought in. Sometimes, when the restaurant was quiet, she'd look at both and remember the day Desperation had brought her exactly what she needed, the secret ingredient. She'd learned was never really a secret at all. It was simply caring enough to put love into the work and trust into the people who showed up when you needed them most. Every dish that left David's kitchen carried that ingredient. And every customer who tasted it could feel the difference, even if they couldn't quite name what it was. Love, served daily, with a side of second chances.